Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share with you the decks that I used the most, or decks on my desk, as I'm calling this series, in quarter two of 2026. So April, May, June. I don't know why months were hard there for a second, but this is a series that I started this year. So if you missed the first installment, I'll leave it linked below. You can go back and watch it. It was kind of my warm-up back into the video creating space after taking what to me felt like a very, very long break. So excuse the production quality. But as you can see, I feel like we are back. And it's summer, which is like my favorite time. So I'm going to be very chatty. In that video, I feel like I really focused on just like getting my feet wet and talking about the decks that I use the most. And I do want to do that again for this installment. However, I want to share more with you about what I was going through during that season, that quarter, if you will, and why these decks, like how were they supportive, so that this isn't just a video of, hey, here's some decks that I love that like tempt you to maybe get them if they resonate with you, but rather something that you can return to if you're feeling like you're in a certain sort of season as well, and have some resources perhaps in your own collection that you already have, or see things that are speaking to you, or understand the function of them so that you can look for the different decks that match that in your own collection to support you during those times. Because to me, personal growth and evolution is kind of my whole gig. It's kind of my whole deal. And I have very intense periods of like death and rebirth that I go through all the time. So if I can not only engage in that in a way that's reflective and digest it for myself in this video, but also help you, I'm winning across the board. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to do my best to show decks while I talk, but you understand if that doesn't happen. First deck that I want to talk about is the Queen Mab Oracle. Now, this quarter two of this year was really big for me in terms of kind of ending and beginning new cycles. For those of you that don't know, kind of went through this like really dark identity stripping period starting in 2024 after my Akashic record initiation. And I just now finally feel like I am emerging from that. And this quarter was really instrumental in finally clicking over, finishing up some projects, things ending, things getting back on track. I'm not going to get into too many personal details, but I had a lot of things end and then or shift over in April. And internally, what that brought up for me was, okay, I finally see the external, I'm still on showing cards. I'm finally seeing the external product of all of this energy that I feel is moving, right? Because all of my cards and like my readings that I got from other people this year were like, hold on, you're almost there, things are shifting. And I was like, off. And I really went through in the first quarter of this year a period of like self-doubt and like trying to figure out what the F was wrong with me as to why I still felt like things weren't working, things weren't moving. And in April, I picked up this deck used and went through the Queen Mab workshop on Almoon 513 Racing's YouTube channel, which is totally free, by the way, that workshop. And immediately fell in love with this deck because the Queen Mab Oracle to me, she's like the no BS, like dark feminine mother. Like somehow this deck is both mystical and grounded. She's loving, but she is not going to let you hide from the truth. And the guidebook has such a beautiful way of pointing out the truth to you, pointing out where you might be hiding the truth from yourself, and showing you a way into that. And I really feel like that was helpful during that period of time. Not just, the workshop work, but the voice of the deck itself, because I was trapped in this like internal voice cycle of the story that I was telling myself about myself, because I was in such an uncomfortable period of, okay, this me that you've been like death card stalking, telling me to let go of, right? This version of me that I finally feel like I have released, which I hadn't really because I was still ruminating on it, right? But I felt like I had released. The Queen Mab just came in and was like, look, we know you're struggling. We hear you. Here's some love. But also, like, if you actually are serious about like stepping into something new, here's what you need to know. Here's the part of you you're ignoring. Here's what you're still hiding. And how are we going to work with that? How are we going to begin to walk forward with this? Because it's time to move on, right? It's time to move on. And I highly recommend this deck for that. And personally, I knew a lot of people loved this deck, but I wasn't picking it up myself because I felt like I didn't like the artwork. And I have to say, the artwork in person speaks to me way more than it did through the screen. So if that's the thing holding you back from this, but you still feel drawn to it for some reason, I would give it a go. So yeah, this was the Queen Map Oracle. Really enjoyed it. I will leave Racine's free workshop with this deck linked below on her YouTube. And yeah, we developed a really good relationship in April. And I am forever grateful that I had that experience with this deck. The next deck kind of speaks to where I shifted after that. So once, I had my period of, how do I want to say this? It's shadow work, right? That's what it is. I did my shadow, was doing more shadow work. My whole life is shadow work. But this particular period of shadow work, of coming to these truths about who I am and how I want to live my life in this world, and the reins that I get to grip in order to do that. Once Queen Mab kind of pulled me out of the dark and was like, do something about this. I pulled out the Macob Tarot. I'm just going to get this to focus for you there. I pulled out the Macabre Tarot, and one thing that I adore about this deck, and thank you so much to my friend, my online internet friend, Akashic friend, who gifted me this deck, because this deck is like, it's my inner aesthetic, minus the bright colors. And the simplicity of this deck mixed with the macabre features, as it suggests, right? And the shadows and the ghosts and the alien-like things and the dripping. There's something about the simplicity, but also the intensity of the imagery that really allows me to access those parts of me, because there's always this part of me, and I think many of us can relate to this, that I feel like this is my true essence, but like I am way too weird to show anybody that. And I feel like this deck really helps me get grounded back into my intensity, my strangeness, and the magic that's found within that. And this deck really forces intuitive interpretations and really makes you respond to the imagery because of the simplicity, right? So you're looking, it's like, if this imagery resonates with you, I feel like this deck would be a fantastic deck with training wheels for getting yourself to read more intuitively. Because again, I've said this like 8 times now, but the simplicity married with the intensity. So this deck, perhaps not for you, perhaps not for everyone, but for me specifically, reminds me who the F I am and reacquaints myself with myself in a way that's both lighthearted but reflects the depth that I feel within. And perhaps that is a Scorpio thing. I don't know. You'll have to let me know in the comments below if you also love this deck. How it reads for you and what your chart is. Perhaps it's just water elements. Who knows? But anyway, we'll end on the death card here. But that is the Macob Tarot. One that I don't use often, but I always return to within my library of decks because of what it represents to me. And I just love her. I just love her. Next deck on the list is the deck I mentioned in every list. Feel free to skip ahead. This is the Haunted House Tarot. So during this quarter, after that period of shadow work and remembrance, that was when kind of the wheel started to turn. This big, like, open-ended chapter that I had from moving to Texas in 2024, even though I had been back for almost a year at that point. I've been back for no. This will be a year. I'd only been back for like 6 months. Anyway, none of that matters. That chapter finally like officially closed up. And then I entered into a period where then I was moving. So I was in that liminal space of things are finally ending, things are finally moving in a direction, and now I'm physically moving. And I have to sit in that liminal, uncomfortable space of I can feel the newness. I can feel, I can see, I can touch, and I can taste where it is that I'm going. And I want it so bad. But I have to be patient and get through this chapter. And whenever I am feeling like I just need something to hold on to, I always return to the Haunted House Tarot. Because this deck is my comfort. This deck is the deck that I don't have to try hard with. It's the deck that I get to be myself with. It's the deck that understands the like dark dramatic teenager within me. Not that I'm a teenager. I'm going to be 33 this year, but you know what I mean? Like there's that over dramatic emotionality that we feel sometimes that we just want somebody to witness us in, but we also want to be reflected, like, our power back to us. And that's the haunted house tarot for me. Like, she instantly connects me to myself, to my death and rebirth endless cycles that I go through, to my gods and my guides, to metaphor, to story, to emotion, to power, to magic. Like, this is just my entire life somehow encompassed in a deck, and I don't know why. And I really hope that everybody gets to find this deck for themselves. And I know that I also felt that way. And I do want to say, if you're someone who is also just like dying inside with desire to find that deck for yourself, it'll happen eventually, but it's not going to happen through force, and it's not going to be the deck you expect it to be. I was reading tarot. Oh my gosh. I've been reading cards for almost 20 years for myself. Oracle cards for myself. And I've been reading tarot for almost 10 years. And 7 years professionally. Anywho, what I'm trying to say is, I've been reading cards for a long time, and I didn't find this deck until about 4 years ago, I think. And we've never looked back. My life is forever changed because of this deck. And honestly, I just got this deck on a whim. It had been on my wish list for a long time. And one day I was just having a moment of splurge, and I hit one of those like big Llewellyn sales, and I put a bunch of decks in my cart, and it came to me. And I didn't even use it right away when I got it. I put it on my shelf and played with some other ones. But after that, this is also when Lilith and I found each other. So this deck is also Lilith to me, who is like she's my homegirl. She's my homegirl. So this might not be a particular recommendation for the Haunted House Tarot if you're also feeling like you're in this space, but this is a encouragement, an affirmation, a reminder to explore, unabashedly identify, and connect with decks that are your home decks, those decks that you return to when you just need some comfort, to be held, to like somebody to hold your hand and like get a little bit petty with you, maybe. Not petty. Unjudgmental confidant, perhaps, is like the best way to describe that. The word is not coming, but this is the Haunted House Tarot, and that is that deck to me. The Oracle deck that also played that role for me, and has been playing that role for me this year and a little bit of a tail end of last year, is the Sacred Rebels Oracle by Alana Fairchild. This deck is really great when you're going through, I have to be careful, some sort of identity crisis. I can never show my favorite cards, of course. But this deck, and I think most of Alana's decks, like I have other Alana Fairchild decks that I could also like interchange out into this spot, but particularly around the idea of self-growth, self-concept on your spiritual path, being in that liminal space, really searching for just like support as you transition and something to like ground you that also gets your feelings. You couldn't tell that's like a very important thing for me as someone who's like all water. Like I need a deck that makes me feel seen. And sometimes that comes from unexpected places, but this deck has been highly instrumental for me this year and was particularly supportive for me in that kind of April to May period. And I couldn't be more grateful to have also come across a glossy copy. I just want to rant with you for a second. This is not related to personal growth at all, but cards, okay? Blue Angel. What the F are you doing? Blue Angel. They used to use this deliciously wet, glossy, flexible, easily shuffleable, decadent, sturdy cardstock. And I have the beautiful privilege of owning this deck and the Isis Oracle. There's the word in this cardstock. But all of their newer printings of these amazing decks, like Vampire Oracle, just all of them, they're cardboard. It's like the thickest thing. There's no way you can riffle it, especially with big hands. Okay, there is a way you can riffle it, but it's not enjoyable. It's really hard on my hands. It's not flexible. The Queen Mab Oracle, it's made out of that. I don't know why I didn't do this rant during that and chose to do it during this. But actually, no, this one's better. This one's better. Don't listen to me. I have to go on this rant. Just please follow me on my journey. Here we go. Earth Warriors Oracle. I had the Kali Oracle. I had the Alice in Wonderland Oracle. I had the Le Vampire Oracle. And I gave them all away because they have this horrendous cardboard cardstock. Oh, this one. I'm going off on a tangent and like totally making myself a liar. Apparently I kept this one because this also has the same cardstock as the Queen Mab Oracle. That's like, see how this is flexible? It's matte, sure, but it's flexible. I can't even show you the one that I hate because apparently I've gotten rid of all of them because I dislike it that much. It's matte cardboard, okay? I'm going to stop now, I promise. Let me know in the comments below if you also are salty about this. So Blue Angel. This cardstock is fine. I don't really like matte. I prefer glossy. It makes the colors pop. It's nicer to shuffle. It's just awesome. But I understand why people like matte. So matte, this cardstock, the Queen Mab Oracle, it's fine. Go back to that. Get rid of the cardboard junk. Okay? Please and thank you. Rant over. Where was I? Focusing again is what we're doing. Thank you. So, this deck. I think I said a lot of things about it. I lost my train of thought. We're going to move on. But highly recommend this, even if it had the bad cardstock. The Sacred Rebels Oracle. Really great, really soothing, really sees you. Great liminal space deck. Highly recommend. That's not in today's video. I'll put that back later. Final two decks. These two decks were new to me. So the reason I mentioned that is, and I did mention that this was new, but I did that workshop with it. The reason I want to mention why these next two decks are new is because sometimes my most used decks are what they are because they are new decks that I have brought into my library of decks, and I want to get to know them. And that's why they make it on the list. And I feel like we aren't transparent enough with that. I personally really enjoy using what I like to say is all of my decks all of the time. And very rarely do I sit down with one dedicated deck for an extended period of time unless I am doing some kind of study with it, going through something that I need it for, doing some kind of workshop, or trying to get to know it. Otherwise, I just pick up whatever deck is speaking to me that day. I do that when I do readings for clients. Every single reading I do, I intuitively pick the decks for your reading, and that in itself is part of the reading for me. So I have a lot of decks that I've had for a long time that while I put them on vacation, while they kind of sit in a little area waiting for that next phase of their use to come up, I always return back to them. And I think it's important to talk about those decks. Maybe I should do a video, decks I always return to. That's a good idea. Let me write that down. All right, getting back on track. 2 new decks. When I made it to June, I was out of that liminal period, or coming out of that liminal period. We had moved at the end of April. I was back in the apartment that I started in 2024. So we've come full circle 2 years later, and I'm now sitting in the same spot, in the same chair that I was sitting in making my videos in the summer of 2024, which is pretty crazy, before I burned my life to the ground and built it back up. But now that I'm in this phase, this period where I feel like I have finally remembered who I am, and I'm reclaiming, reshaping this self-identity with all of the best pieces of myself, and just this culmination of who I've become, is really exciting for me. It's really weird. It's delicious. Sometimes you just feel things, and the only way that you can express them is through weird noises and gestures. Anyway, we're getting really sidetracked now. Since I entered this phase, I went through, as I was packing, all of my decks, and I boxed up 2 boxes worth of decks, which is about half of my decks. So half of my decks I put away and decided that they just didn't resonate with me for where I'm going now. Some of them I might keep in storage to see if I think about them and want to pull them back out. Some of them I already traded. Some of them I'm thinking of rehoming in other ways. And after I did that, I was like, I'm perfectly happy with my deck library. And then there were all these decks that had been on my wish list for however long since I knew about them. And I'll be honest with you, I just kind of went on a buying spree for the past 2 months. And it's felt really decadent and beautiful. But that's not to say you need to do this. That's just where I'm at right now. So these 2 decks are new. 5-minute explanation for 3 seconds. These 2 decks are new. And this period good feels like, and now we're at the end of July, so I'm kind of like talking a little bit about next quarter, so I'm sure I'll repeat myself in this next video, in this installment that I film. But let's talk about this while I show you the Oracle of Unknown Reasons. This deck is actually a deck that I purchased after seeing one card. A Riffle in Time. I'm on her Patreon. She also has a tarot and oracle deck shop where she stocks indie decks, and some mass market. But anyway, she posted one card from this deck. I'd never heard of this creator before, never seen anything about it, didn't know it existed, and I went to a Riffles Times website and I bought it. And this really is a special deck, and it's special to me because now that I feel like I'm finally in this reemergence energy, and I'm finally feeling my creativity again, which I felt like, ooh, this is very like Hecate. I like this. I feel like I lost that creativity, that energy for a really long time. And now that it's finally coming back, this deck really reminds me of that creative passion that I have. For those of you, many of you probably already know this because you are here because of you found me in my previous life, but in a previous chapter in this life, I ran a creative journaling channel on YouTube for about 7 years. I had a Patreon and an Etsy shop, the whole shebang. And I was teaching creative journaling classes. And my main way that I creative journal is very similar to how I perceive these cards put together. Collage with both images and magazine, a lot of like naturescapes, and then like paint and colorful marks like you see in this here. Like this is my whole art aesthetic, perhaps not mushroom clouds, but you know what I mean. Surrealism and this kind of like messy, bold pops of color, the intensity mixed with like the surreal, real life, scrapbooky, collagey kind of feel. Like this is my creative aesthetic, which is ironic, right? Because I feel like my insides are so macabre, right? They're so dark, they're so haunted house, like this. But there's this whole other side of me. And I feel like this deck, the Oracle of Unknown Reasons, really helped me tap back into that, even down to the title. Like sometimes, a lot of the times, when I'm making art, when I'm making collage, it's a bunch of just stuff that I put together for an unknown reason. I just follow whatever looks good to my eye at the moment, and I let my creativity just like purge out. And then I usually step back later and I'm like, damn, that was meaningful. But this idea of like, for some, I don't know if this is what they meant by the title, the creator of this, but for some unknown reason, this is the Oracle card that got put together. Like for some unknown reason, this is what came out. I like that idea. And while in quarter one, in the first part of 2026, I really developed this lusty, beautiful relationship with these blue bones, which I feel is more of that like emotional, moody, there's a fly, summer, emotional, moody, romantic aspect that helps, these blue bones helps you get in touch with. This is more of that like fire, creativity, trust in what happens next. Like these blue bones is inner world, and this is inner world presented to the outer world. That's how I feel about Oracle of Unknown Reasons. And this was the best, the best impulse purchase ever. And even just the experience of buying this deck taught me something about myself, and reminded me that just because I have an impulse doesn't mean it comes from an ego rash space. Sometimes it's coming from an intuitive space, and I don't always have to dampen that first reaction, that excitement, that impulsive aspect of myself, that sometimes it's meant to be unleashed. And I can relinquish that control a little bit. I can know that, at the time I had got my tax return, so I had the funds to like rashly spend $100 on this deck, which I have zero regrets for, by the way. And follow my little sparks. This deck was really meaningful for me in June, in case you couldn't tell. I will leave this creator linked below. I'm also going to, link below a Riffle in Time. She has an Etsy channel, a Patreon, her shop, etc., etc. I don't know if she has any of this deck left, but I will leave. I have an affiliate link. So like anyone can get one, but on her website. But I have an affiliate link. If you use that, you got $5 off, and I get $5 credit on her shop. And I buy things from her at this point monthly. So anywho's, there's that. Should you choose to use it. Zero pressure. Last but not least. This deck holds a very special place in my collection. This is our library. I don't like to say collection. It's a library. Because I don't collect. They're tools that I use, and your girl has no problem getting rid of them. We have, me and my deck library have a steady in and out flow, and I love trading decks with other people, which I feel like is kind of like a library, right? Like, I'm not lending it to them technically. They're keeping it, and I'm keeping what they give me, at least for a time, but it's an exchange. Anyway, this deck is the deck that I use to talk to my aunt who passed away last August. So we're approaching almost a full year now. And I am in love with this deck. And even if this deck wasn't what I used, even if that wasn't what I used this deck for, there we go. I adore this deck, and I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. It follows this rubber duck through these magical, like, watery lands, and it sounds very childish in a way, but it's really not. This deck is full of animal spirits, it's full of nature and symbolism and the ocean aspects and these little like imaginary creature things, and there's something about this just speaks so well to my inner child who just adored anything to do with the water and nature and animals and these like secret worlds. And I'm usually not someone who enjoys animal decks, but this one I feel like is done so well, especially because it has the story of the world and the journey of the duck that's like going through it. I love this one too. and the moth and the anglerfish. This deck just brings me so much joy. It reminds me kind of nostalgically of my childhood, which is very much kind of the energy of that relationship with my aunt anyway. But it also speaks to all facets of the natural world and how kind of those spiritual fantasy aspects can cross over with the very real mundane aspects of just natural life, like going out of your house and seeing an animal, you know? I really, really enjoy this deck. It's by US Game Systems, and it's really great shuffle, I have to say. It's a really great riffle shuffle. So this deck, again, here's the thing about recommending decks. I don't know if you'll have the same experience with this deck that I do because of the personal associations that I have with it. And that's what makes a deck special. But if this imagery speaks to you, this deck is phenomenal. I'm going to leave it on this. I got this card the other day. I love it. I love that it still kind of has that. It has like the cute, like, yeah, it's kind of kid-ish. Like, it's very young presenting, right? But then it also has the more macabre features, like that skeleton in the diving suit. I also really appreciate, I'm terrified of snakes. Like, if there's one irrational fear I have in this world, snakes is one of them. And I've gotten a lot better over the years, but I do okay with this depiction. I have a really hard time with hyper realistic snakes, especially when they're focused on the head. Even just thinking. Okay. Anyway, I definitely died from a snake bite in my past life. I'm almost positive. But anyway, I don't know if sharing that last deck was helpful to you at all, but those were all the decks that I used the most in Q2. I hope that you enjoyed this very rambly video, that you got to know some more intimate personal things about me that you maybe did or didn't want to know. You got to enjoy my rant about Blue Angel cardstock, and prove the fact that I can't even keep one in my collection to show you how awful it is. And I hope that this inspired you in some way, whether I kept you company while you did something creative, or you found resonance with something I was sharing, or you feel inspired to pull something out or explore your own journey or decks in this way. Yeah, I just hope you got something out of it. That's all. Oh, I also want to mention how I calculate this, because I know there's going to be some of you right now, because I would be that person who's like, I would love to track what decks I use the most in a month, but I'm just not the type of person to write down every single time that I use a deck, right? So here's how I do this, and it's very it's not hyper accurate, but it's enough for me to be able to do this video for you each quarter and for myself, which makes it's of the most importance to me. So it's the end of July. I haven't started my list yet for July, but I'm going to. So for Q3, but I'm going to today. Here's my list for Q2. What I do is I separate tarot from oracle, and I try my best to start this list at the beginning of the quarter. And every time that I change out the decks on my desk, which is probably about once a month, I would say. I go through and I write down the decks that are on there. And I think, when did I use that? And I literally put however many stars I think. Like, oh, I remember using it for that. And I think I used it for this particular spread or that observance or like whatever. And periodically I do pick this up and I'll just do that. I'll be like, what did I use recently? Oh, I used this oracle. Oh, I know I pulled from that deck a lot. So I'll just add more stars. So this isn't a hyper accurate list. It's a generalized record that I come to maybe 6 times, maybe twice a month. I come in here. And at the end of the quarter, I go, okay, what had a lot of stars next to it? Those are my top 6. The end. So all of that to say, that is not a instruction on how you should do your recording if you choose to do this, but this is an encouragement to say that you don't need to sit down every time you pull a card and write down what deck you used in order to track this for yourself. This can be don't be a perfectionist about it. That's all. Don't be a perfectionist about it. Don't steal the joy away from yourself from doing this practice because you think it has to be perfect, because it's not. For me, anyway. Okay. And you don't need a special journal to do it. There, I said it. I'm just going to keep rambling in your ear, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'll see you again very soon. Take care, my loves. Bye.